story is simple. It's three things: a beginning, a middle, and an end. But the thing is, people look at Broken Coworker and they're like, oh, I can just make something up. We didn't make something up. We modeled Haji Kamal, right? We modeled comic books. In order to write dialogue, you have to practice writing dialogue. And the best dialogue is in movie scripts. But in a real world situation, what you want is every single one of your options to be a lesson.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Genius Talk, where we pick the brains of thought leaders from the world of L&D. I'm Apurva, your session host for tonight, and I'm also an L&D marketer from Animaker. For the people who don't know, Animaker is an AI animation platform with over 30 million users across the globe, out of which 1/3 of them are actually L&D creators. And today we are going to discuss about the topic, the power of storytelling in e-learning, and we have got the best person to discuss about it. Hi, Anna Sabramowicz. Super happy to have you. So a quick introduction about Anna. She is an expert in interactive storytelling and scenario-based learning. She, with over 15 years of experience, Anna has worked with a lot of international brands like Sony, Adidas, Michelin, and also Save the Children and many more brands. And she also co-created the Broken Coworker, and in an articulate storyline project that has won a lot of awards and recognitions. She was also the founder of E-Learning Leaders. It is actually a coaching program that helps a lot of instructional designers to create a lot of immersive learning experience programs. And currently she has her own firm called E-Learning Secrets, where she helps a lot of e-learning professionals to get started with their own consultancies. And other than that, she is also an international speaker. She constantly advocates about a lot of L&D related topics on her LinkedIn as well as on her YouTube channel. So please do check it out. I've added the links in the description. And once again, I'm super happy to have you with us. And I'm sure this discussion is going to be great and useful for our audience too.
Thank you, Apurva. I got to say, one, you do your research well, and your questions are fantastic. So I'm really excited to be here with you to talk about something that I love. It's great. Awesome.
Great. So Anna, this interview session is divided into 3 parts. The first part of the interview is called the Genius Talk, where we'll be talking about your incredible career journey. The second part of the interview is called Picking the Genius Brains, where we'll be getting into the topic of the day, that is storytelling in e-learning. And the last and final part is the rapid fire round, which is my favorite part, where I'll be asking some juicy questions about L&D. And without any further ado, I think we can get started. So part 1, Genius Journey. So Anna, as mentioned earlier, you've been in the industry for almost 15 years now, and you've worked with a lot of top brands, but clearly you're one of the prominent names in the world of L&D. So, but how did it all get started? Like, how did you start your career in L&D, or like were you part of another profession, and how did you get into this?
I'll make it brief because 15 years is a long time. But basically what happened is I wanted to be a teacher, and my loan didn't come through, so I had to take a corporate job. And there I realized that there's actually a way to actually work with people like a trainer. So I was like, this is exciting, I'll do this, right? And what happened is that then I got into the world of adult education, and e-learning was just starting, because that's how old I am. And then what happened is I realized that that's kind of the path I wanted to take. So I think there's a lot of people who are actually transitioning from teaching because they love working with people, but they didn't know that this kind of world existed in the corporate sector, right? So that was my foray, and then the rest really is history. So then I just started, working with like corporations. I got a job as an official instructional designer after that, but I got a couple of years of really good experience working with adults, and I really enjoyed that. I really loved creating experiences that moved the needle for adult audiences. They expect different things, so it's a different challenge than working with children, right? And that was fun, and I found that was fun, and then I just ran with it.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting story, especially when the industry was getting started at that time, and you were also part of that journey. So that's great. You initially started as a traditional e-learning designer, and then you transitioned into the interactive storytelling part. So what inspired you to transition into this zone, and what was you're so passionate that you even teach others as well. So what made you get into teaching line of this as well?
That's a great question. So what happens is most times when you work in an organization, you have to be a jack of all trades. Like you have to design performance support, you have to design e-learning, you have to design facilitator guides, like you're doing it all. And I did. But then what happened is when I transitioned to become an independent instructional designer, a consultant, I kind of did the same thing. I did all kinds of things. And what happened was eventually you end up kind of saying, I really like these kinds of projects. And I'm thinking, what if I just decided that I could just do this and say no to all the other stuff? And that's kind of what happened. So when we did, our interactive story Broken Coworker, I thought, this is awesome. This is fun. Can I do this? And that's kind of how it manifested. Not everybody has that luxury, but what's awesome is when you go independent, you can have that choice. And that's kind of the cream of being independent, is that you have choice as opposed to working in an organization.
Yes, that's I think it's a very interesting way to put, because when you're independent, you have the choice to let go of the things that you really don't want to pursue. So that's great. So now we're getting to the second part of the interview, that is the picking the genius brain. So that is the part 2. So in that, my first question is, first of all, I am a huge fan of your the Broken Coworker. The project was mind-blowing. I think it was so good that it was, when I got to know that it was made in the year 2011, I was like so mind-blown. Like, it was so ahead of its time. So, and you mentioned in interviews that I took inspiration from the Connect with Haji Kamal project. So what inspired you particularly about it, and how did you get started with the whole the Broken Coworker concept? How did it manifest?
Well, what happened is, at that time, Articulate Storyline was just launching Storyline. There was no Storyline yet. And so what happened is I was invited to be part of the beta by Tom Coleman. And at the same time, my partner, Ryan Martin, who is also a huge comic book geek, right? He got into it as well. And then when he saw Connect with Haji Kamal, which is, also comic book based. For those of you who don't know, it is basically a story about a soldier is put into a difficult situation in Afghanistan, and he has to negotiate with the locals to kind of get their buy-in, right? As a foreigner. And it was really beautifully visually set up. The decisions were very difficult. It was super challenging, but it only took like 2 minutes to do. And we were like, man, this is wicked. This is so cool. How can we do something like this, right? And so that's where Broken Coworker came from. And Broken Coworker, for those of you who haven't seen it, and you should check it out because we've actually done some fun things with it, is about 2 people at an office who are having one of them is very timid and shy and feels that they're bullied by their coworker. That came from my experiences and Ryan's. So we were our own subject matter experts, but we thought, why don't we make something that's harassment based, right? Because there's tons of harassment training out there. But usually the harassment's like, oh, my boss is harassing me. But what happens if it's like somebody who's not your boss, right? What happens if it's your colleague and you don't know what to do, and really it's up to you to make those decisions, not just go straight to somebody, right? And say, HR, please help me. So we were gonna, how do you navigate those difficult situations? And also, we wanted to push the platform, right? To push ourselves creatively to see what we could do, because 2011 is a long time ago. That's like in software years, that's like, I don't know, 50 years, right? So it's like, it's a long time ago. So then we were like, let's push it. Let's push the envelope.
Wow, that's actually, as I said, I have done that course many times to get everything right. So I know that.
Good for you.
in and out by now, and I was able to learn actually, how to deal with such pushy people who are working with us. So that was really a fantastic project. So let me lead the next question with that. So how to, as a beginner, how can somebody get started on their, how to create characters and stories? What are the frameworks to follow as a beginner to get started with, building a scenario-based learning program?
That's a great question. That's a fantastic question, because a lot of people want to do that kind of work, right? And I think one of the things that happens is we get overwhelmed with all the tools and the options. But what I want to say is that the first thing you want to do is find a couple of examples that you're like, oh, I love that experience. I felt like I could, like it made me want to finish it. Like, go find those experiences, because the thing is, people look at Broken Coworker and they're like, oh, I can just make something up. We didn't make something up. We modeled Haji Kamal, right? We modeled comic books, layouts and things like that. We studied, there's fantastic books like, which I suggest if you really want to get serious about actually creating great experiences, Scott McCloud, who is a comic book developer, he tells you how to even visually lay out panels. So, because scenarios, you can take them to certain levels. You can do scenario design with just words. You can do scenario designs with words and visuals. You can do multimedia, right? So I'd say don't limit yourself, right? Because Broken Coworker was my first foray into that, and look how it came out. You just need to push yourself creatively, but also have good models. So the first thing you want to do is find something that you like and you want to emulate, because you want to model first. So you want to do that and deconstruct it. Say, why does it work? Go through it 15 times and just find the pattern, because everything does have a pattern.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that storytelling, so there's scenarios, and then there's scenarios and storytelling, right? Those are all different layers. So I'd say choose your layers first, you know what I mean? So you can, and maybe start a little bit simpler in the beginning, because storytelling can be very simple.
Yeah.
We overcomplicate it with technology, language, media, blah, 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 right? So at its core, I actually have a very simple framework for people to follow for storytelling. And I'll share that if you guys want to do that. Yeah? Okay, cool. Okay. So a story at its core, and I'll just keep it here, is a sequence of events, right? And this is where people mess up. The story is simple. It's three things: a beginning, a middle, and an end. Most people just have a beginning and they don't even think where they want to take the story. Where do you want it to end? So, and on a piece of paper, do this. Don't get into the software yet. What's the beginning of your story? What's going to happen in the middle? And how is it going to end? Those should be 3 lines. Now, the first thing you got to think about also is, who's your character? Who's your protagonist? Who's going to be in charge of working through the story, working through the challenges? And then what do they want to achieve? Their desire. Is it a promotion? Is it to keep their job? Is it, all those, you have to think about, what does that person ultimately want? Work-life balance. And then the things in the middle, those are little challenges that they have to overcome in order to reach this. And what you're trying to do through this, for this character, is transformation, as in, after they've gone through the story, what have they learned? What's their lesson? So in Broken Coworker, what is the transformation? Is Sam learns, I can stand up for myself. What does he really want? He wants to keep his job. It's that simple. But those are the things, you can write those out in little sentences. Just have that mindset for yourself. And then you can decide, and I know you have a question about that. How do you write those scenario questions? What are the things? I call them mechanics, which is, what's the pattern of interaction? How are you going to set it up so that the person learns how to make decisions without being distracted? Because so when you're designing an interactive story in a medium, it's also a product, a software product. So one of the things you have to think about as a designer is, how can I make the experience so seamless so that the person gets lost in the story without constantly having to try to figure out the UI of the experience? If every single time you put a question and it's completely different and everything's laid out differently, they're going to get lost in how to make the decision instead of what am I making a decision about. So that's a part of your mechanics, which we can talk about a little bit later too. Anyways, I hope that is helpful, but let me know if I need to clarify any aspects.
No, it was clear. Like, it's like have a mind map or mind map, or visually draw a map to actually connect these things. I think, it helps you to keep focused on the final goal, without getting lost through the way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So the next question is again, as a beginner, when you start designing all these, it can be a little overwhelming, right? What to focus on, what not to focus on. As you mentioned earlier, simplifying the process. So how to, what are the things that, they should, they can actually, let go of while designing these courses? Because you have multiple things on your plate. There are certain things that you can eliminate. You don't have to worry about it now, and you don't have to take too much into your system. So how to simplify the process for themselves, how to break it down, and how to focus on the core of the design.
So I would say stick to first having it all laid out on the paper. Now, one of the things that novices usually struggle with when you come to scenarios, it's because the software allows us to go in infinite possibilities, infinite directions, which is the opposite of creativity, because creativity needs constraints. So what you want to do is for yourself in the very beginning is to create guardrails and say to yourself, can I make this interactive story in 4 questions? Let's say 4 questions. Okay. Can I get them to from the beginning to the story to the end? And can I give them 4 really good decisions to make? And it'll feel like the person will feel like, woo, that was good. I feel like I've learned something. Broken Coworker was 7 questions, right?
Yes.
So start with that. So in the beginning, create guardrails for yourself. The other thing you want to do is this path, like this is the simple version, right? And this is from the A to B. Do that first. Because a lot of people will be like, okay, I'm going to do this option and then it's going to branch out into other things up here. If the most important thing is to solidify what I call the green path. If they went through all the decisions in the right order, they chose all the right things, what is that first? And then you can decide, where do I want to add complexity, right? Yeah, because a lot of people just start here and then they'll just get lost right here, or they'll just balloon into things. Yeah, and I've designed things where it's like there's 47 decision points. And I was like, this sucks for everyone, for reviewing, for the learner, they'll get lost too. And for me as well, right? So you want to be kind to yourself and create those constraints in the beginning. It will help you. You can always add more complexity later. You can always add more branches later. But for now, just make sure you're solid on that path, because that is going to be the thing that transforms you and your learner, or the person who's going through your interactive story, to get those lessons.
I like the way you say, first get the right answers, write the right answers and then add the things that, that makes it more complex, or the decisions more harder. So yeah, that's a very useful point, I believe. So the next question is creating a question. So while designing a question for scenario-based learning, what are the elements that they have to keep in mind while designing a particular question? Like what should they do in each question? So is there a pattern or a template that they can follow for each question?
Definitely. And I call that the mechanics of your experience. So one of the things that messes people up when they're designing scenario-based questions is they take their academic learning that they've had and they're like, oh, I'm just going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to have option A, B, C, D. A, you could have none of the above, A and B. Scenarios don't work like that. Scenarios are trying to mimic real life decision making. So what happens is the rules are out, they're gone. What you need to do is you need to decide for your particular dynamics, the situation that the person is in, what's going to make the most sense. I would say if you have basically a situation and then the person has to make decisions, right? So they have option A, B, or C. I would say maximum 3, to be honest. But I've built scenarios where I only have 2 options, this or that. And I would say that sometimes that's more powerful, because in the moment when somebody is in a difficult situation, like let's say it was a hostage situation, you don't go, oh, is it this? No, they're like, it's like take action or leave, like this, that's it. And so you have to decide what will make sense for your audience, and then if possible, keep that pattern, because the most important thing is for your audience to, in the very beginning, get so used to the pattern of your story, they're no longer thinking about what to press and how to press it. They're thinking about, oh my God, I have to make a decision, and is this the right one? And it's very challenging. So it's kind of tempting in the beginning to be like, I'm just going to stick to 3 or even add 4. But what happens is then it adds almost unnecessary options that don't feel real. Like, and also I've heard this before. People are like, I'll add funny ones, or I'll add these goofy ones or something, there's a place for that. But in a real world situation, what you want is every single one of your options to be a lesson, right? And it's going to be. So if I choose this one, I'm going to learn something, even if it's the wrong thing. So you don't want to say, I'm going to choose to go party and have a bunch of beers, if that's just being whimsical, because they're not going to learn anything from that. And in fact, adult learners will probably find you annoying for wasting their time. Yeah. So what you want to stick to is you have a really meaningful question there, and then options that each of them will be a lesson. So if you want to have 2, I've even designed ones where it's just 1 option, because I don't want the person to think, it depends on what you want to accomplish, but sometimes there is no other option, and you want to make that clear in the training. So I had a bunch of questions where it was like 2 options, 2 options, 2 options, and then all of a sudden something important happened and they just had the 1 option. And I don't want them to think there's any other options. That the lesson I want them to know is this is the only thing to do right now. And then they see what happens. So that's used very strategically, and I wouldn't use it often. But if you really want to reinforce something, sometimes they're just like, oh my God, that is the only option. Boom, right? So that's kind of how to think about it. So so you're still following the process of designing multiple choice questions, really, you are, but it's not an academic process. It's more of a, what would a person do in this situation, and what's the lesson they're going to get with the consequence that I'm going to show them after they make this decision.
True. While talking about options, so my previous interview was with Christy Tucker, and yes. While asking, so she told me something like the options has to look plausible, like like both the options will be sound like it is the right option to choose, but Absolutely. But in certain scenarios, there's only one option that will work. So don't give these options that are really because as you mentioned, adults get annoyed with you don't give something that's really insulting, don't add options that are like it won't make sense. Just to add for the sake of it, don't add anything like that. Just add 2 options that are like, that'll really make you think, there's one option that both options will work, but only one works in that situation. So yes. I wanted to add the point here as well. So
absolutely. Yeah.
And so while talking about writing questions and all that, I was really impressed with the dialogues. And you mentioned in one of your interviews that writing dialogues for scenarios is such a skill, because it has to be short and it has to be precise, but at the same time it has to give the context to the learner about the hero who is pursuing the journey. So what is your take about writing dialogues that are short and precise but also make sense, bang on? How do you do that?
So there's several things that fall into dialogue writing. So what's cool is if you are leveraging visuals, you can use the visuals to do half of the talking for you, right? So it takes away the words, kind of like comic books do, right? Somebody can just say whoa, and then you see the whole what's happening, and you're just like, that's enough, right? The visuals will always win that way. We'll always look at them first. The other thing I suggest is dialogue writing is a skill, and there's several things you should do. When I write dialogue for stories, I listen to my interviews with subject matter experts. And I'm not talking about subject matter experts who are experts in the process or in the, like, experts in the topic. In order to write interactive stories, you need to talk to people who are actual practitioners in the field. And they'll tell you they'll tell you their stories, and then you'll be able to hear how they speak. And from those transcripts, I pull a lot of the dialogue. The other thing is that in order to write dialogue, you have to practice writing dialogue. And the best dialogue is in movie scripts. So there's a ton of movie scripts out there that you can just download. Now, by hand, not by typing, by hand, write out Glengarry Glen Ross is a fantastic one, because it just goes, it's like people going, hey you, what's up? All of a sudden, there's none of this it's hard to, when we go to school, we get our degrees, what happens is we kind of port that language over into our writing. But dialogue writing is obviously completely different. Now you're going to be a movie director, a movie script writer, not even a director, a script writer. So what's best is to actually find great scripts and actually write them out. It'll teach your brain how to think in that pattern. And then once you write your script, edit. Just say, if I remove half of this, would it still make sense? And also read it out loud to yourself. And then you'll be like, okay. So you have to read it out loud, edit it as much as you possibly can, and see if the minimum bare bones will make the impact, see if it works with the visuals. And then also practice writing scripts. By writing them out by hand, it'll teach you how to do that better.
Wow, it's an iterative process, yes. And you should also know which one you should let go of. Deleting things is also equally a skill that people should practice. Yes.
Very good point, Apurva. Absolutely. I think most people, it is. There's lots of quotes about that, right? Basically how simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? But it takes time to get there. Nobody wakes up with simplicity. We actually overcomplicate things. That's kind of our default. So yes, so deleting things, and we call it murdering your darlings. You got to murder your darlings. So some things you're just like, oh, this is such a great idea, and it took me forever to come up with this. But then you're like, that doesn't add anything. If I take it away, it's still a great story. So let's cut it and make this more focused, and people will appreciate that.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense. Next question is what is the future? What are your thoughts about the future of interactive storytelling? Since there are lots of tools out there, AI tools, there are lots of technology that has come from the time you started. So what is your prediction about the future for scenario-based learning and storytelling?
So I think we're living in the most amazing time. Every day I wake up, there's new things, new tools, new opportunities. The thing is, everything's kind of still in this primordial stage, snippets, right? And what I feel is the time right now is for you to kind of two things. One, go deep on something and get really good at it. If you want to get really good at dialogue and script writing and storytelling, go all in on that, because all the other things will kind of software will augment you. So figure out where you can do that. The other thing is that there is still people who, and there always will be, who have kind of this super domain expertise. I've worked with people who are amazing at visuals, right? They're illustrators. They've been drawing since they were 7. So I'll hand them a script, and they'll visualize it in images that is just going to blow your mind, take the story to the next level. So software is cool, but you still need the person to kind of to understand that language so well to do that for you. So it's kind of what I'm thinking is that if you want to really hone specific skills and then augment it with either other people, collaborate with them, and at the same time realize that the technology is going to augment you. So as good as you are, it's kind of like using ChatGPT. If you ask it silly questions, it's going to give you silly answers. If you ask it profound questions, it's going to give you profound answers, right? So that's why prompt engineering is so huge, but it's a skill you got to learn. So figure out how you can take your passion and get super good at it, be the creme de la creme, and then augment that with the tech. And I think that's what's going to be the future, is people who are really solid with their craft, but also leveraging AI or the tools that are coming out to just take them to the next level and just really shine.
True. Yeah. You have to go with the flow, and how the world is evolving. You have to get on board with it to develop everything. So the final question is, let's talk about your firm, the e-learning secrets. So what is your consultancy all about, and what do you guys do to help the L&D professionals?
Thank you for asking. Well, basically what happened is I ran a bunch of academies for interactive storytelling. And I helped people design award-winning interactive stories, beautiful pieces. The challenge was that some of them who went solo, a year after they'd come back and they're like, Anna, I can't find work. And so I realized that you can't just have this skill, like to be an interactive storyteller. You also have to have the skill of business, right?
Yes.
How do you promote your work? How do you get work that actually, where people pay what you're worth, the value that you bring, the excitement, this experience, all that stuff. So I was like, I think that's the problem I want to solve. Because there's enough people out there teaching this stuff. And also I have a whole YouTube channel full of stuff if people want to learn it, and you have, which is amazing. I'm so grateful you even watch my videos. You are a super nerd, my friend. I love it.
It was really interesting to watch your videos. I learned a lot.
Thank you. So basically what happens is, if you've been doing this for a while and you want to do the thing that I did, which is I want to do more of the thing that makes me happy, and maybe start something on the side for yourself, and maybe see one day turn that into something like full-time, then that's kind of what I help people do, is transition. Because a lot of them come in saying, I don't know how to, I feel weird promoting myself. I was like, let's teach you how to do that. Let's teach you how to have conversations where you come into the place and say, listen, I'm not just going to create you an interactive story. I'm going to save you a whole bunch of money because people are going to make better decisions. That's the thing. So how do we do that? And that's the point of our program, is to teach people how to make that transition and do more of what they love.
The marketing aspect of, being a solo L&D professional, yes, which is competitive, yes, so understandable. Your service is definitely going to be valuable, I guess. So that the second part of the interview is done. Now we are getting into the fun part of the interview, the third part, rapid fire questions. So quick questions, quick answers, that's it. So yeah. So in your opinion, what's the one skill that, in every L&D professionals must have?
Writing.
It's funny.
Don't be fast.
Yes, because it's funny, because even Christy Tucker told the same answer without thinking, because writing is the most important thing to have. Yes, so yeah. So
we're on the same page.
What is your most favorite and least favorite part of your profession?
Most favorite, when I can have people have aha moments, like they'll be stuck in their ways for years, and all of a sudden I put them in a situation where their assumptions are challenged, and all of a sudden this creates a click. I love that. That is the best. The worst is, I think the worst is when I see things that people are attached to that make no sense anymore, but they just don't question them because they're kind of the status quo. And I think everything should be questioned for its validity. Everything should interview for its spot on the table, at the table. So we should be more judgmental, if we can, about the things that we're using, to see if they actually add value, or if we're just using them because we're comfortable with them. So that part annoys me a little bit, but that's every industry, I'm thinking.
Yes, true. So yeah, that's nice. So what are your favorite go-to places, to the blogs, the books that you go, the forums that you follow to know about scenario-based learning or L&D, anything about related to L&D? What do you follow?
Well, one of the things that I really enjoy is actually playing video games. Right?
Okay.
Because they're perfect scenarios. Now everything is narrative, right? Like Deus Ex, amazing. Like there's lots of fabulous questions, scenario questions, decisions. So you get even learn about mechanics. So you can borrow. Comic books as well, because they're all visual. So you have to read a lot of that media, consume the media. Because I talk to a lot of people who are like, I've never, played a video game. I'm like, dude, then how can you do UX UI? Like you gotta, so you gotta play some games. You gotta do some fun stuff that you learn what works. So that for me is kind of like where I go to. The other thing is books about basically psychology. Not L&D based books, but more like Daniel Kahneman, James Clear, people like Robert Cialdini, who are like masters of psychology and persuasion, because that's what storytelling is persuasion. So you want to read those books so you can learn about psychology and see, how can I persuade these people to change their mind about this, right? Because that's what we're doing in L&D. We're trying to get people from this unhappy place to a way better place over here. And that's all persuasion. So those are things I would recommend, and I find very stimulating.
I think your answer is very interesting, because you're like, I would be open to read anything and everything, because if something will inspire me at some point for me to create something new. So I think we should be open to new experiences. So what's the one thing you wish you had known when you started your career, like in L&D?
Oh, come on. That's a hard one. Okay, no, it's not that hard. Here's the thing. I think that in the very beginning, I was a little too, I wish I'd known that opportunities don't always present themselves. And they won't continue presenting themselves. So if something comes up, be ready to take it, even if you're not ready. Just jump on it, because a lot of times we're like, I'm not ready for that, or this is going to be too difficult. Well, that's how you learn. So there was things that I said no to because I was like, I'm not ready. It's just me. You can figure that out along the way, really.
That's actually a general good advice, for anybody who's starting out in their field.
Thank you.
So, what's the one piece of information that you want the audience to take away from this video, like about storytelling and scenario-based learning?
That it's another tool in your toolkit. Don't apply it blindly, but if you're passionate and interested about it, just go deep, because it will affect other places. It will, interactive storytelling is multi-layered, right? You just talked about it. There's visuals, there's script writing, there's process writing, there's working with subject matter experts. Those are so many skills, right, that you have to hone to create something awesome. So even if you go deep on this, there's aspects of this that you can take to every other aspect of your work. So it's a fantastic skill to learn, because it is multifaceted, and you get to, if you're open-minded to it, I suggest you also collaborate with other people who are skilled in visuals, skilled in UX UI, skilled in gamification, so that you can learn to integrate all these pieces. Even if you're not good at it yourself, becoming a great collaborator, that is an amazing skill to have as well. So that's hopefully helpful.
That was fantastic advice. And with that, we've come to the end of the session. Thank you, Anna. This was such a fantastic interview. It was so crisp and nice to learn from an expert like you. And I really hope the audience also find it very useful. Thank you so much for joining the session.
Apurva, thank you for picking my brain. I don't think I'm qualified to be called a genius, but I appreciate it. And also, this was so much fun. I enjoy your energy and enthusiasm. So I much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.